But first up, let's talk about the possibility of a nurses' strike. If it does go ahead, it will be the biggest strike in the NHS's history. The Royal College of Nursing has ended their ballot of 300,000 nurses. But even though just a few of those ballots have been counted, it does appear that will be a massive support for that strike. They are calling for, wait for it, a 15 to 17% pay rise. That's to make up for the 20% real terms cut in pay since 2010. Are they likely to get it? And will the public support a strike? Let's talk to Anthony Johnson. He's a practicing nurse. He's also an organiser with Nurses United. They're a grassroots network of nurses who are committed to protecting the NHS. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks very much for joining us. First of all, I mean, a lot of people are very sympathetic to nurses. They're not the highest paid. They're also not the lowest paid workers. But they say they need this pay rise of 5% above the retail price index, which is at 12% in most recent figures. Why do you think they deserve that?
Well, at the moment, we can all see what the reason why nurses deserve that. If you look at the NHS daily, we're declaring critical incidents. We can all see the amount of ambulances that are having to queue outside A&E, and that's because we don't have the staff in place. During the last 12 years, nurses have lost about a third of their salaries, so it's about 11 grand per year in real terms pay cuts because of the rate of inflation. And that's meant that we've ended up having 47,000 vacancies throughout the NHS for nurses, 135,000 for all NHS workers, and that puts patient safety at risk. So the reason why this demand is being made is because if we don't do this, if we don't change things soon, our patients are going to continue to be at risk. It's not at risk in the future, it's at risk right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly people are with those long delays. And there's certainly a big issue. Is 132,000 vacancies across the NHS in all different fields. A lot of the people doing the scanning and all of that not available either. Is it just down to money, though? Is that the issue? We know a lot of nurses are leaving the NHS to then go and work for agencies. They get to choose their shift pattern. They get paid more, but of course don't have some of the job security they used to have when they were with the NHS. Is it just about money, or is it also about working conditions and other issues?
I mean, your pay is directly linked to your working conditions, unfortunately. During the pandemic, half of my team quit working as a health visitor. So for me, they left.
Why was that? Just because of pay?
Because of pay, yeah. Because
what did they go off to do that was higher paid?
Well, they retired, Julia.
Well, then they didn't quit because of pay then, did they?
No, because the thing is the NHS, we know, is built on the goodwill of nurses. We know that nurses have a habit of retiring and returning. But if your pay is not going to be able to keep up with the cost of living, people were making decisions of, why am I making this decision? I had colleagues who've decided to go work in supermarkets because it worked out better for them in terms of their work-life balance. And they actually felt like they were earning a similar salary to what they were
Okay, so then that's not about the money. It's about the general job conditions. It's about the shift work and things like that, isn't it? I mean, again, if you've got a young family. But you say the NHS is built on the goodwill of nurses. I mean, I'm sorry, they are paid to do a job.
But as I was saying to you, and you mentioned, they're paid more working for agencies. They're paid more working in any other English-speaking country. They're paid that extra 10 grand a year that we've lost. So the problem is that we can say that this is about working conditions as well, but they're directly linked. If you have a high pay, you end up having more people wanting to do nursing and more people wanting to stay in nursing. And that's what I mentioned. Happened to me.
This is the thing. I mean, we talk about nurses being low paid, and there's always this thing, the nurses, governments don't mess with nurses because everyone loves nurses. My sister-in-law is a nurse, and I know what she earns. But we look at the salaries in terms of how much do nurses earn. According to the official figures from the NHS, a newly qualified nurse earns around £30,000. I think it's around looks like it's around the sort of the 27 to early 30s, depending on obviously their London waiting and things like that. A consultant nurse, so you've gone high up the pay scale there. You're looking at above 45,000, around the 50 grand mark. That won't be most nurses. Most nurses will be an experienced nurse will be earning in the mid 30s. It's not great pay. You're not going to be a millionaire and pay off the mortgage on this, but it is average pay or slightly above average pay. It is undoubtedly skilled work. But a lot of people might say, well, I don't earn that much. It's quite rewarding work, I would have thought. If you're a nurse working for the NHS, you're going to get your pension. You've got a lot of job security. Are nurses on such a bad deal compared to other people?
Well, if you have to have the education of a STEM level subject, so, most nurses, like with our A levels, we could work in loads of different scientific fields.
Well, why don't they then? I mean, I could have gone off and been a banker and earned £1 million, but I didn't.
But Julia, that's what I'm saying. People are doing that. If people could have a better quality of life, if they weren't having to do such physically and emotionally demanding labour all the time, then they will do. And that's what we're seeing within the NHS. And if we don't then raise pay to the point where it becomes attractive, well, then we're not going to be able to have the kind of service that people are expecting when they're paying their taxes. And that's the thing, is we need to raise pay so that people actually get the kind of NHS that they want.
Okay.
Even though people might say that, we're near that kind of middle income in point, that's fine. But we need to then raise pay, though, if we want to have the NHS.
What about, thing is, if the government gives in on this, and there may be a lot more support for nurses going on strike than, say, railway workers who, basically it's a day with a Y in it, I'll go out on strike, and are on really for, frankly, not as skilled work in terms of driving a train. I'm sorry, train drivers being paid a whack. You're looking at 60 grand for driving a tube train or a train. I mean, give me a break. I'm all for anyone earning whatever they can, but don't pretend you're hard done by on those sort of salaries. But this is the thing: there might be a lot of public support, but can the government afford to give in when there are so many different unions, particularly in the public sector, that are, whether it's, unison workers, whether it's, people working at the Royal Mail, anyway. If the government gives in to nurses and they get something close to this award, we're going to see strikes across the board, are we not?
But that's the problem, though, Julie. Why is it just accepted that nurses and all public sector workers our quality of life is going to go down?
But everyone's quality of life is going down. Most people in the public sector are taking a pay cut, and private sector are taking a pay cut as well. Their bosses aren't paying them 12% pay rises.
But Julia, that's the thing that has been that's been written into the media discourse, that we all have to see a drop in our life.
No, it's not we all have to. I'm just saying the reality is the public sector are not uniquely being hit by this.
I don't agree that is the reality. I mean, we've seen massive profits in terms of, corporations. We've seen massive profits in terms of tax havens. That would mean that rather than giving, tax cuts to bankers or letting them have the bonuses, why don't we actually invest in the things that people want and need?
I'm all in favour of that, but the reality is, unfortunately, and I'm all in favour of, we should be doing business with any businesses that are based in tax havens and things. Yes, let's step down on that. But at the end of the day, if you've got more than 1 million people employed in one particular sector in the healthcare service, and you give them all a 15 to 17% pay rise to make up for the austerity years and for what's going on right now, you're going to break the bank.
But Julia, the fact is that, as you pointed out, we are working people. So out of necessity, we've all got bills to pay in terms of the increase in energy costs. We've all got bills to pay in terms of what we might spend out in the private sector. We'll spend that money and that will create jobs. Like, there's been loads of economic studies on that. There have been, though, Julia, where people have shown that out of necessity, we will spend that money. So it actually is an economic...
there's certainly the marginal propensity to consume. I did my economics A level. People on lower incomes are going to spend that money, not save it. Yeah, a tax cut to the very rich is no good because they're just going to keep that in their savings. It doesn't help the general economy. I get that. However, that money has to come from somewhere, and that money is going to come from taxes, or either taxes in the future from borrowing, or tax rises right now. So, or other cuts to public services. It's going to have to be paid for, and that comes out of the economy as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying, though. There's ways that we can raise taxes progressively, and there's ways that those decisions are not currently being made at the moment by this government. And that's what I'm saying. We could do those things. There's loads of things that, people sometimes from a right-wing slant bring up this idea of, we've got to have more efficiency savings within the NHS. We've got things like private finance investments that we could that we could get rid of. The cost, something like 4 billion is the internal market.
But that was brought in by Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I'm not going on and being political about this. I'm saying let's get rid of those things that are causing detriment.
Well, unfortunately, those are legal contracts. I mean, I think, they were appalling. They've ended up costing the NHS absolute fortunes. And again, that therefore taxpayers. I just wonder if this is the answer. Do you think, finally, this nurses' strike is going to happen?
I think that we're going to see nurses going and standing up and putting out a voice for their patients. Yeah, I think that nurses have been frustrated by the situation as they see it. Okay. I think that patient safety isn't going to improve if we don't take action. So, yes, they are going to have to do that. All
right. Anthony Johnson, thank you very much indeed. He's a practicing nurse himself and an organiser with Nurses United.